Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all. Sandra, you want to call the roll, please?
Of course, Mr. Chair. Superintendent Chaudhary. Absent. Secretary Churchill is present.
Present.
Mr. Derenberg.
Present.
Ms. Eberhardt.
I'm here.
Mr. Gibbons.
Present.
Ms. Lala.
Here.
Mr. Lombardo is absent. Secretary McCord
Present.
and Chair Casemeyer.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Alex, any revisions to the agenda?
We have just added recently a correspondence from Johns Hopkins, and
Okay.
we can cover that when ready.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to let you all know that, a year or so ago, there was a legislative work group dealing with basically our study of the facilities assessment and our process for doing that. And after that work group had completed its work, President Ferguson made me aware that former Health Secretary Sharfstein, who now is with Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, he and several of his colleagues had studied this issue and were studying the same things, the assessment process that we developed. And President Ferguson desired that we work with him to see if we could collaboratively see if there are any weaknesses or problems with our system and how it could be made better. But anyway, so we've been talking with him for, I guess, Alex, a year or so since before Bob left. And more recently, a week or so ago, Dr. Sharfstein, sent a letter to me, an 11-page letter, and also sent it to the Sun paper, basically saying that they disagreed with, I don't want to say more than it says, but felt that it could have been done, our study could have been done better, and that he felt that our system disproportionately impacted the low-income Black and Hispanic students. We disagreed with his analysis, and we responded to the paper with a courteous response that, we've been working with Dr. Sharfstein and will continue to do so. But that's where I just thought you should know, being as it was sent to the paper, his letter, those discussions have been ongoing. Alex, do you want to add any more to?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. In their letter, Dr. Sharfstein and Lofton provided some information about weighting and calculations, and we have staff looking into those, and we'll be happy to continue the conversation with the folks from Johns Hopkins on the details of calculations and weighting. They also made a request that the IAC consider changes to its approach before the start of the legislative session. And because the determination of the weighting is by law, the responsibility of the work group, which will reconvene in the future before anything is implemented. The IAC does not adopt any specific approach, is not expected to adopt one. And as a result, the IAC cannot accommodate that request specifically. However, we again will be happy to continue to work with the folks from Johns Hopkins on the details, and appreciate very much their input.
Any questions about that situation of the letter? Okay. Any public comment? Cassandra? Or Alex?
No
None?
public comment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Alex, you want to take us through the consent agenda and the information?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. In the consent agenda, we have administrative items, including last month's minutes, contracts, revisions to previously approved contracts, closeouts, and one change order approval, all standard Nothing, I think, that needs to be highlighted here. In addition, we have an informational report on facility status changes, a delegated program extension, and the most recent Built to Learn project status report, which does not have any significant new additions to it, just minor updates on progress status. And so we're happy to stand for questions on any of these items.
Any questions on the items Alex just went through? Do I hear a motion that we approve the agenda and informational items?
Move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Item number 2 is similar to something we dealt with last month, but is different in a major way. Heidi's going to lead us through the issue of the Lake Clifton High School sale. Heidi.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. For the record, Heidi Dutterer, Assistant Attorney General for the IAC. The item today is before you because in August of 2019, the IAC approved the transfer of the Lake Clifton Senior High School building from the Board of Education, the Baltimore City Board of Education, to the use of that building back to the city. The city now seeks to sell the property and to Morgan State University. Morgan State University anticipates using that property as a satellite campus that would include academic and research buildings, athletic facilities, mixed-use housing, and public and private partnerships. This campus is located just to the east and a little bit south of Johns Hopkins University. Again, much like the Roland Patterson item that we had last month, the IAC, this project needs to come before the IAC before this sale can go forward. The city has provided a property appraisal for this property that was actually commissioned by Morgan State of $2,030,000, and the consideration for this this transfer would be just the amount that is owed by the city to the state for outstanding debt service, which at this time it appears to be $93,652.80. We're going to confirm that with the state treasurer's office. Andy Frank is here from the city comptroller's office if you have any questions.
You going to read the motion, Heidi? You have.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The motion is to either approve, deny, or hold this item for the sale of the property. And I can read the rest of the motion. I just need to know which of those verbs I'll be using.
Why don't we read the motion as if we're going to approve, and we'll see how the discussion goes.
Okay. The motion is to approve the sale of the property formerly used for Lake Clifton High School, located at 2801 St. Lo Drive, Baltimore, Maryland, 21213, from the Mayor and City Council of Baltimore to Morgan State University on terms set forth in the land disposition agreement entered into between these parties and attached to today's agenda. The consideration for the sale of the property is the amount of the outstanding state bond debt associated with the property, which amount will be confirmed by the state treasurer's office. In accordance with this commission's August 22, 2019 approval of the closure and transfer of this property to the mayor and city council of Baltimore, this approval is also conditioned upon full repayment of the outstanding state bond debt associated with this property by Baltimore City within 30 days of the closing of the sale of the property.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion? Positive. Ms. Everhart. Hear a second? Ms. Lawler.
Second.
Discussion. Again, this is similar to the project we talked about last month, except this is a public entity. Morgan State is acquiring this property. Any questions to Heidi? Ms. Everhart.
Not a question, but I support this motion because Morgan is a very valuable asset to the city of Baltimore in a variety of ways. They are increasing the student enrollment, and this is drastically needed for them to be able to continue. in their mission, which is critical, not just to Baltimore, the state, and the country.
Thank you. Any other comments? Secretary McCord.
Yes, I'm supportive of the motion also. Morgan has a great planning program, has been a great partner with the Maryland Department of Planning, and anything they can do to expand their programming, I'm a big fan of that and in favor of that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye, or raise your hand. Aye,
Aye.
raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Let's go to item 3, adoption of COMAR revisions. Jonathan, you want to do that?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commission members.
Good morning.
At the July 14th, 2022 meeting, the IAC approved COMAR revisions to Regulation 143907. These revisions were to codify the educational sufficiency standards into regulations. The revisions, as shown on page 378 of the agenda, were published in the September 9th, 2022 Maryland Register. The revisions were open for a period of 30 days for public comment. We received 3 responses during that time from Baltimore County, Baltimore City, and the climate parents of Prince George's County. Their comments are provided in the agenda starting on pages 384. IAC staff have reviewed the comments and determined that while the comments received provide critical feedback for the IAC, staff does not recommend changes to the proposed COMAR as a result. The educational sufficiency standards established minimum levels for physical attributes, capacity, and educational suitability of existing public K-12 school facilities for use by the IAC facility assessors only as part of the statewide facility assessment. They do not define IAC's participation in a project, nor do they require that a building should be built only to meet these standards. The IAC uses the gross area baselines and other factors to determine funding for new construction/renovation projects. If approved, the final notice will be published in the Maryland Register and the regulations will go into effect 10 days after publication. We can now stand for questions and to read the motion.
Why don't you read the motion, please, first, Jonathan?
Yep. The motion is to adopt the final COMAR revisions as published in the September 9th, 2022 Maryland Register.
I hear a motion that we support the motion mentioned by
Move to
Jonathan.
support, Mr. Chairman. Gloria Lawler.
Thank you. Second? Have a second? Thank you. Okay, any comments, questions? Linda?
Just to clarify, the reasons that the comments from the city, the state, and the parent group, what we're putting into COMAR, from my understanding, is based on what the legislation was. Is there any reason that we shouldn't, we need to, I mean, you've explained that, but can you go into a little more detail what their major concern was and how we're addressing that?
Mr. Chair and Ms. Eberhardt, the major concern that we heard expressed was really about what the IAC will fund when it participates in projects. It was about the spaces that are needed for providing education, especially in light of the blueprint bill and all the different activities that are going on around determining what is the right space to provide for education right now. The sufficiency standards don't determine what we will pay for when we build a project. They're meant to just be the bare minimum that we use when we do the assessment to make sure that we're comparing every school against each other, in that they have the bare minimum required to provide an education. We use a completely different set of standards when we're funding a project. It's called the gross area baselines and a number of other funding factors. And you're actually going to see us talk about some gross area baseline variances later on in in the agenda where we're actually saying that even our standards aren't enough. We want to give more. So what we use to determine what a project is eligible for is very different than the sufficiency standards. That's why we don't think changes to the sufficiency standards are needed. If we were to change those at this time, it would impact our ability to compare that assessment from one round to another. So it would make it impossible to longitudinally track the results of the assessment that we've already gotten so far. Blueprint did require, or House Bill 1290 required, that we do look at all of our gross area baselines and determine if they're eligible to meet the intent of Blueprint. We are working on that exercise. We're required to have it done by October of 2023, and that is in progress right now. So we may see some changes on the funding and eligibility side, but we're not at this time recommending changes to the assessment side.
Thank you. That does clarify, because I always supported the flexibility that you gave in the funding based on what the counties and that specific school needed, and just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to change that flexibility model that you've set and been able to use in all of our schools in the state. So thank you for that explanation.
Any other questions on the motion? Secretary McCord.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to comment that these sufficiency standards have to, I mean, we're hearing from like 2 of the 4 biggest jurisdictions in the state, but we have to consider that these standards will work in Garrett County and Somerset County also. So we can't just react to a larger school system's concerns if this concept doesn't impact funding in the way that Cassandra has stated. Then I think that I don't think we need to change the regulations because of the concerns that were raised. So I agree with what's been proposed, and I just wanted to say that we have to be concerned about Garrett County and Somerset also, and we don't want to try to tell somebody that you need a school that big and the heat and cool and all that business, because it may not be required in all those smaller counties. So we have responsibility from one side of the state to the other. So just wanted to raise that point. I'm not trying to discount anything that's been raised by Baltimore City or Baltimore County. Just wanted to say that our responsibility goes all across the state, and it's not really, as Cassandra was saying, that's not really going to impact the funding in the way that somebody has perceived it now. So, that's my 2 cents there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd just like to throw in a quick comment that we really do appreciate the feedback from the LEAs that submitted on this issue. This is, as Cassandra explained, this is not exactly the venue for those items to be handled in. Those will be covered over the next year as we work on the revisions to the gross area baselines for Blueprint. But this kind of engagement and this attention to details very much appreciated, and we thank those LEAs for providing those comments, and they are going to be useful over the next few months. So that's very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, all in favor of the motion, raise your hand or say aye. Any opposed? Aye. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item 4. Baltimore City Public Schools, City College High School gross area baseline variance. Griselle?
Good morning, Chair Casemeyer.
Morning.
Good morning. On October 7th, 2022, IAC staff received a formal gross area baseline variance request from Baltimore City Public School System for the Baltimore City College High School for the consideration of the additional eligible gross square foot to be funded above the GAB. IAC staff analyzed the justifications and recommend the variance to be approved based on 2 primary considerations. First, the facility is made up of historic buildings with load-bearing walls. As a result, the existing building includes structural features that cannot be changed while preserving the historic nature of the facility. Specifically, load-bearing walls along the corridors do not provide flexibility in the change of use or redesign, preventing the reduction of size of spaces to optimize efficiency while meeting educational specifications. As a result, some spaces must remain larger than would be optimal for maintaining a total gross square foot within the outer boundaries of size described by the GABs. Retention of the basic structure of the facility, including the iconic tower, is supportable to preserve the historic nature of the facility. Next, the facility's historic nature and site conditions. IAC staff agree that the historic nature of the building and the site should be maintained, and therefore no relocation of the building on the site is supported, and retention of the historic features of the building is supportable. The IAC staff recommend the approval of a GAB variance of 14,345 gross square foot, including 500 new gross square feet for ADA compliance that will replace the 500 square feet being demolished, for a state supportable total gross square foot of 296,380. This figure differs from the requested 297,300 gross square foot by 920 gross square foot due to an unexplained discrepancy between the gross square foot figure requested by city schools and the actual gross square foot of the existing facility as shown in the IAC facility inventory database. I will now read the motion. The motion is to approve a gross area baseline variance that will support an additional 14,345 gross square feet for the Baltimore City College High School number 480 renovation and addition project. This increases the eligible gross square foot from 279,035 to 296,380, inclusive of cooperative use space for an approved projected enrollment of 1,816 students.
Thank you, Griselle. You hear a motion to support. Everhart, second.
Second.
Secretary Churchill. Any questions for Griselle on this issue? Secretary Churchill. Secretary Churchill.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I don't have a question. I am in support, but I just want to.
I'm not saying anything. Something's wrong. I don't know what the problem is exactly. Yeah, but I'm not saying anything, but something's happening. Go ahead, try again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you. I am in support. I just want to give context to the age of this building as to when we hear things like we have load-bearing walls and things. This is not a modern building. This is a historic high school, and I think it's one of the oldest schools in the country. Can you confirm that? I think this building, part of this was built in the 1800s, correct?
So the original building was built in 1928 with additions later on in the 1979.
It is a very old building, and that's why, I think it's appropriate for the variance. So thank you.
Mr. Derenberg.
Also, just whatever they are doing there, Baltimore City College, it has to undo it. They have a 95% graduation rate, which is incredible for Baltimore schools, where other high schools are at 40% or less. So money would be well spent for that high school.
Yeah, Mr. Derenberg, your audio is breaking up a little bit, but fundamentally we heard your message, but it's sounding funny, just so you know.
Thanks.
Other questions? Okay. All in favor of the motion, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the Built to Learn project approval, Arabia.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair and Commission members. I'd like to begin by pointing out that there is a discrepancy in the motion. The recommended BTO allocation for the renovation and construction of an addition at Baltimore City College is $125.5 million and not the $129 million as shown. Staff's recommendation to support this project is based on project readiness, cash flow needs, and an approved educational specification. The maximum state construction allocation includes a deduction to account for projects funded by the IAC within the last 15 years, as well as a reduction in the state share to properly capture the square footage for the areas of the school that were renovated within the last 25 years. Additionally, BTL recommendations are anticipated to be presented to the commission at the December meeting. Grisel, the regional facilities manager, is available to address project-specific questions.
Raby, you want to read the motion, please?
Yes, to approve the Baltimore City College renovation addition project as presented to be fully funded and executed through the Build to Learn Act, totaling approximately $125.5 million. The final funding amount is subject to adjustment based upon finalization of the project worksheet and the review of project eligibility.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Here's support for somebody want to make that motion, please? Anybody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Secretary Churchill, seconded by Secretary McCord. Questions about the motion? Ms. Everhart.
It appears then we are funding $4 million less on this project than originally. Does the city school support and agree to that decrease in funding?
Okay, so that would probably be Grisel. She's been in communication with the LEA.
Yes. And as Arabia mentioned, these are state-supported projects completed in the last 15 years, which the sum of the total would be the decrease that we're seeing from the 128 million down to 125 million. And yes, originally, Baltimore City, when they submitted this application, there was a lot of factors that they hadn't included in their computation worksheet, which we are yielding I want to say a few million more dollars than they originally had anticipated. And so they're happy with the result, including the variance that was approved for this.
Because I'm familiar with the school as head of teaching and learning. I mean, when it was renovated before, they didn't touch their 16 science labs. They didn't put in air conditioning. There was just not, I mean, it's an old building and it takes a lot more, as you know, to renovate and maintain the spaces. So I just want to make sure they have enough that is really going to bring the school up to the 21st century standards for, you know, what is expected, that we won't have to come back in a few years and say, oh, we didn't have enough money to do this or that. So you feel that this
Alex,
is adequate funding?
Alex, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Eberhardt, the request here is being funded with the gross area baseline at a much higher level than would initially have been possible. The deductions noted here are the same that are part of the standard process of accounting for past state investments in the school as the way we do for every project that comes through. And so it is required that we take into account those factors, and this is absolutely adjusted to fit the specific situation of City College as a historic building with all the challenges that come with that.
No, but can you reassure Ms. Everhart that all the things you mentioned are going to be completed in this renovation, air conditioning and so forth?
Yes, based upon the project details provided to date by City Schools, which does not include all of the design work yet. So we have not yet seen all of the components that will go into this renovation, but I have confidence that City Schools will be doing the complete and comprehensive renovation that provides both the learning environments that we would want for the students going forward, as well as preserving the historic aspects of that kind of singular facility.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Any other questions? All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, number 6, Calvert County Public Schools, Huntington Elementary School Emergency Project. Arabia?
Yes. Calvert County has submitted a funding request for an emergency repair project to address failing septic drain fields at Huntingtown Elementary School. The septic field was constructed in 1971 and was recently identified as failing during the repair course of another project at the school. The IAC retains an emergency repair fund for emergency project requests that present an immediate health or safety hazard or threat of severe damage to school buildings or grounds that could not have been reasonably foreseen through regular inspections or corrected through a regular preventive maintenance program. IAC staff have reviewed the request and additional documentation provided by the LEA and believe this project meets these requirements. Additional backup documentation is available on pages 397 to 459 of your agenda. The facilities manager for Calvert County is available to respond to any technical questions if you require more or desire more information.
Thank you. Want to read the motion, please?
Yes. The motion is to approve the Calvert County Public Schools Emergency Repair Project for the failing septic field at Huntingtown Elementary School and to decrease the emergency fund account by $184,800 and transfer from the emergency reserve fund account and apply $184,800 to the Huntingtown Elementary School Emergency Septic Field Replacement Project.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do I hear a motion in support? Ms. Everhart, a second?
Ms. Everhart, second.
Secretary Churchill. Questions? Any questions on the motion? All in favor say aye. Or raise your hand. Any opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, thank you. Item 7, pass-through grant funding approval. Arabia?
Yes, the 2022 capital budget bill appropriated $237 million to be distributed to specific local education agencies for school construction projects selected by each county. These funds are required to be allocated as block grants to the LEAs with minimal oversight by the IAC. The applications are received and approved on a rolling basis. A summary of approved funding can be found on page 461 of your agenda. On page 460, you'll see the request that is at hand today. Frederick County has requested approval of funding for 5 projects. 4 projects are for replacement of existing grass fields with synthetic turf fields with a total cost of $7.8 million. The last project is for additional funding for the Thurmont Elementary limited renovation. In FY 2022, this project was approved for funding through the CIP. However, the maximum state construction allocation has been determined to be insufficient to meet the state share of the total project due to inflation and cost increases. The IAC staff believes this application meets the eligibility requirements of the pass-through grant and recommend approval of the request. The RFM for Frederick County is available to address project-specific questions, and I'll read the motion, which is to approve the pass-through grant program projects as presented in this item with a total allocation of $10 million, subject to reconciliation and potential adjustment at project closeout.
Do I hear a motion to support the motion that Arabia mentioned? Somebody, Ms. Everhart, second. Secretary Churchill. Discussions on the motion. Garenberg. You're on mute.
You're on mute. Now, I no question.
Okay. Secretary McCord.
Yes, just a question. How long do they have to take advantage of this funding? Because it seems like lots of LEAs have not taken advantage of it.
They have until May the 1st of 2023. So you'll be receiving or seeing additional recommendations for funding in the next few months.
Thanks, Arabia. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you, Arabia.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, for our final item, the commission expects to discuss a personnel matter and pursuant to section 3-305 of the general provisions article of the annotated code of Maryland. I will ask for a motion to close the meeting. Do I have a motion to close the meeting?
I have a motion to close the meeting.
So moved. All in favor? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The commission will now move into closed session. We will return to open
Recording
session.
stopped.
Thank you.
Give everyone a moment to leave. Brett, can you count us down?
Okay, we're back in open session. The session's being recorded. One final thing, I just want to let you know that Alex and his staff have recently visited with the Howard County Executive, Baltimore County, and will be visiting Prince George's County Executive. We've been invited to those meetings, and I think that's a good thing for us to get around and talk to these people. Does anyone have any other announcements or comments they want to make? Do we hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, Mr. Gibbons. Okay, this meeting is concluded. Thank you all.